biggest thing you can do in politics, like the best thing you can have is my father used to work at Newark Airport and his name is Muhammad. They literally fired him because his name was Muhammad. I believe in who I am and being very confident in like my abilities. I had graduated with my master's degree. I'd gone into Harvard Law School and I'm the president of the school board. And so Jersey City had never had a Muslim elected official. My opponent was a two-tour Afghanistan veteran. He was a VP at a bank in his mid-40s on the board of some nonprofits in Jersey City. My resume was 20-year-old college kid. We win that election 9,388 to 9,320, 68 votes. And politics is sort of like a web. Even though there's like thousands and tens of thousands of voters, the people who are like really behind the scenes as operating as operators, it's like a very small group of people. I don't just represent Muslims. I don't just represent young people. I don't just represent like people of color. I represent everybody. The doctor calls me and he's like, hey, listen, you have advanced stage cancer.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Muslim Made podcast. This is where real Muslims share real success. Every episode you'll hear inspiring stories from entrepreneurs, change makers, and community builders. And what a character that we have on today. We have the most interesting person on the planet, or at least the most interesting person in the room. How we doing, Musab?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing good. Thank you guys for having me.
Alhamdulillah, as we always do, part of our tradition is we always renew our intentions. As we like to say, all success begins with honest and true intentions. So to renew that, we are Muslim made, and our mission is to inspire and grow a community of Muslims who want to bring barakah into the world through success and their work. Musab, there's so much that we can say to introduce you to everyone. But I'll kind of leave it to your story. We were catching up. The last time I actually spoke to you and got to actually have a good conversation with you was back when we were both in college at Rutgers Newark. And during that time, it was interesting. It was Trump had just gotten elected. And it was a quite exciting time for you because you were really dipping your toe into making an impact. We want to kind of navigate your story, the life and times of Musa, but also talk a little bit about some practical advice. You've been to some incredible places around the world thanks to your journey, and you've been able to definitely make an impact. So we want to definitely bring that story to our listeners. We wanted to start the story with your spark and drive. Born and bred JC, man, JC kid. Why don't you tell us about it? What was it like growing up in JC, and how would you say your upbringing and the community around you shaped who you are?
Yeah, I mean, I got to say, I think Jersey is a great city in the world.
Cap.
It's, but I will say this, a lot of people can say they love their hometown. Not everybody knows that their hometown loves them back, right? It's like, you gotta actually like put yourself out there. And like, for me, what's very lucky is like, I got to be in that position from like a very young age where I got to see like, oh, does my city actually love me? Right? Or at least give me responsibility. Love is, I think, a little bit further. But, like growing up, I mean, Jersey is like a very, very diverse city. By some metrics, the most diverse city in the country. It's also like 43% foreign born, like first generation. So what that means is like you're walking around, you have people who are speaking all sorts of different languages, right? People speaking Urdu, people speaking Tagalog, people speaking Spanish. Yeah. That's like a very common thing. Like this is a normal thing to happen in a city. Whereas like, you talk to some people where they think about like, oh, like to be American is like, oh, you speak English in America. Like that was not normal in Jersey City, right? Like in Jersey City, like it was abnormal if you only spoke one language. It was like, oh, you only speak English? Like that's it, And so I think like growing up in this system where I never felt like a minority was like really, really helpful as I like transitioned into like wanting to be in rooms of power or like wanting to be in rooms where I could like really make an influence. Yeah.
It's interesting because like I feel like it had a big impact on how you saw the world around you. Do you feel like you saw the world a little bit differently than the other people around you? Because Jersey City is such an interesting place because it has like the extreme wealth and then it has like some of that like hometown poverty that you don't see until you really grew up and look in hindsight. What is your 2 cents on that?
Yeah, and I think it's been exasperated, right? Like Jersey, we often talk about it like a tale of two cities, right? So you have like the waterfront, the Gold Coast, where people are like extremely wealthy. I mean, like just like on some census figures to look at this, right? Like if you look at census tracts, there are certain census tracts where like the median income has gone from 70,000 in 2010 to 270,000, right? So like a median household income going from 70 to 270, like that is not the same people who live there, right? And like what these households are comprised of and who these people are is like completely different. And you see that like taking place in Jersey City. I mean, Jersey City is like hyper gentrified in many ways, right? But you still have very poor kids that are in the school district, right? The public schools still accommodates all these first generation kids who are coming across who aren't very wealthy. And so you're dealing with all these sorts of interesting problems and subsets of problems that exist. And I think as a city, it's like really difficult to like, put your arms around it.
How did JC end up in that place? Going from 70K average to 270. It's something that a lot of cities, even Patterson, I think dreams of becoming like.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is like the proximity to New York City was a big thing for us. I think pandemic has like accelerated this issue, but I think for a long time it's been like the kind of investments that developers have made and like what those investments have looked like, right? And for me, like one of the biggest gripes I have is like, why is it only like luxury condo buildings that people are building, or luxury rentals, right? Like we don't even build condos. At least with a condo, like people can generate wealth, right? Like if you purchase a condo, you're like, oh, I have skin in the game.
Right.
But if you're only gonna build luxury rentals, like the people who live there, like what skin do they have in the game? They're like, look, I rent here, I live here, and eventually I'm gonna move out. Like that's it. I have no like real stake in what's happening.
It's a complete business transaction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. What's something from your childhood or teenage years that you feel like really like prepared you for the political world? You said rooms of power. A lot of kids coming out of places that we know, like Patterson and JC, they're not prepared for rooms of power. What sets you apart?
I don't know if it's something that set me apart, man. I just think like the Jersey City spirit that I had was just like, look, man, like I believe in who I am and being very confident in like my abilities. And like, you know, I feel like for a lot of my peers, like there were moments where I had to step up on their behalf. And I don't think I actually realized that I had leadership qualities. Like, you know, my focus was always to be a doctor, right? Like I was like, okay, I'm going to go to medical school. Like my parents were brown, you know, it's just normal.
Classic.
Like this normal behavior.
This is the way to go.
Like this is what you do, right? You should go to medical school. And it's weird because in hindsight, some of my friends from high school told me like, they were like, we knew you were never going to be a doctor.
Oh, wow.
Right. And it wasn't like a dig at my academic potential, but it was more so an understanding of like my other skills that I had, right? Like bringing people together, like having like different social circles, right? So like I both operated in like these very academic circles in my school where like I was with all smart kids, but then like those popular social circles where I was like, oh, like these are, I'm just hanging out with the boys, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think I realized that what that leadership capacity was until like much later on.
Yeah, it's really unique. Usually a lot of people get pigeonholed into a certain group and they kind of flourish in their own way, and that like kind of being be able to play on all teams is really unique. Do you think there's a certain part of your childhood or upbringing that kind of made you a little bit more dangerous, not only on the home team, but in like, you know, in different parts of the social spectrum?
I think it was really like, I think sports was always really big for me. Like sports and fitness was always really big. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of like memories around this. Is like I remember when I was young in 6th grade, I remember I couldn't do any pull-ups, right? So they have like the fitness tests that take place inside the public schools, right? And I couldn't do any pull-ups. Like I remember like literally doing 0, right? And I remember being so pissed about it that the next year, like all I did is I spent my time in fitness, and the next year I think I did like either 13 or 14 pull-ups as a 7th grader. And
who did you want to prove wrong? Was it yourself or everyone around you?
I think it was me. Like, because I remember, you know what it was? It's like you make excuses for yourself. And I remember I got up on the pull-up bar and I moved like 2 centimeters, right? I moved like this, and I was like, oh, you guys saw me? Like I was like doing it, right? Like I was so close, right? And like obviously I was so far away from it. But like I hated that I made that excuse to myself of like, oh, like I couldn't even do like half a pull-up. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna lock in.
Yeah.
And like, you know, it's the same time that like puberty kind of starts to kick in, and like you have all these hormones raging, and you're like, where do I channel this energy? And I just channeled it into like fitness and being like, all right, like I have the academic side down. Yeah. Like now we're going to crush it on like the athletic side. So, you know,
like, so your origin sounds like started from a pull-up bar.
I was going to say you completed the most insane pull-up in the world by becoming the youngest Muslim elected official in history. Tell us a story around that, man. Was it planned? Did you stumble across it? What was the circumstances?
I was never. So again, the plan was never to go into politics, right? Like I'm pre-med. I'm at Rutgers. Trump is running for office, right? And like he has a quote about Jersey City where he says, I remember seeing thousands and thousands of Muslims cheering on the rooftops of Jersey City, New Jersey during 9/11. And that to me like really struck me, right? Because my family actually came here September 2000. And so like 9/11 was like our 1-year anniversary. My father used to work at Newark Airport, and you know, his name is Muhammad. They literally fired him because his name was Muhammad. They were like, you need to do a background check, but it was like a background check that never came. And then my mom, she wears hijab, right? And so like for 3 years, no one sat next to her on the bus. Oof. And so I remember sort of like growing up in that environment of like, oh, like 9/11, obviously it was like a really, really harmful thing for a lot of us. And it's interesting because Rutgers Newark still has an ongoing case, right? Like the Rutgers Newark MSA was infiltrated by the NYPD. The NYPD infiltrated mosques in Jersey City, but infiltrated student groups, including the MSA that I ended up being the president at some point at Rutgers Newark, right? So there's still a case that's active that still hasn't been like, the case files have never come out around this. And so for Trump to say this about Muslims in Jersey City, I'm like, dude, like, where's our representation? Like,
why do you think he got away with that?
I just don't think there were Muslims who were there representing us, right? And so Jersey City had never had a Muslim elected official. So I ran for office in 2016 when I was 19, and I lost, and Trump won, right? So 2016 was tough, right? Like as a teenager, both really hurt your self-esteem that you lose, but then you're like, wow, the country just picked this guy? Like, that's insane. So then 2017 passes the Muslim ban, and I'm like, nah, this guy's serious. Like, this is for real. So run again. So now the election was, someone had resigned. So instead of a 3-year seat, I was running for a 1-year seat. My opponent was a 2-tour Afghanistan veteran. He was a VP at a bank in his mid-40s on the board of some nonprofits in Jersey City. My resume was 20-year-old college kid. We win that election 9,388 to 9,320. 68 votes. 68 votes. And alhamdulillah, become the first Muslim ever elected in Jersey City history, the youngest person elected in Jersey City history, and the youngest Muslim elected in the country.
Looking back, what was the circumstances around that victory? Like, what was the playbook that you followed? How did you get that win? Was that straight, the hand of God coming down, like lifting you up for that pull up? Or?
I think at some level it is, right? Like there's some level of it that's like, I think outside of your control. But I think we had a very distinct message, right? Like I remember very distinctly, like I was 20, right? So I had to like play this age thing. Like people knew I was super young. I was in college. Yep. And so I would say to people like, I think students are the forgotten stakeholders of education, right? I would say to them like, look, like we'll talk to teachers, we'll talk to parents, we'll talk to taxpayers. Like how often are we asking young people and students like how they feel about their education? Like, when you get to college, people start to ask feedback like, like evaluate this professor, right? Or at the end of the semester, like, can you give feedback on the course? You don't ask anybody who's in high school about that, right? And so like kids give no feedback. And so I'm like, students are the forgotten stakeholders. Like they need to stay at the table. And that was like constantly like something that we said. And I think it resonated with voters who were like, oh, you know what? Like it's one seat, right? Like, yeah, maybe he's 20, like maybe if like whatever, like it's 1-year seat. If if he really sucks, like we'll get rid of him. But like we should give and empower that forgotten stakeholder, right? Like he is representing that community. And so like that's how we, I think that's how we
how did you develop trust? You're 20 years old. I to be honest, if I was in that situation, there's a lot of cases where I wouldn't trust in any normal situation a 20-year-old. Like, how did you build that trust with the people of Jersey City, and specifically, how do you go up against someone like that in a competition where you feel like the cards are a little bit stacked against you?
I didn't think the cards were stacked against me. I'll be honest with you. Like, I think if we went to debates, I think I like actually knew more than they did because I just run the previous year, right? So I think about it. I'm just off the cycle where I've just done all these debates, and now I'm going back into all these debates once again, right? So like we're sort of like building infrastructure one on top of each other, and I think like when it came to debates, we were just so much more prepared. Like I understood the numbers, I understood the facts, I understood like what I wanted to do, what were my policy positions, like how did I want to change the schools. And I think we just came across as a lot more polished. Like I think I've had people that I meet even today who said they remember my debates from when I was 19.
Oh, wow.
Like they were like, the impression you left when you were 19 at the debate stage has stayed with me for like the last 8 years.
How did you sharpen your tools? How did you sharpen the knife? It seems like that's pretty unique. Do you think it just comes naturally to you, or did you start off in a place where you felt like you weren't that great?
I think I've always just been very good at like, taking a lot of discrete numbers and like translating them into stories, right? That like are accessible to like everyday people. Because I think the hard thing is like, even if you understand like complicated data sets and data and numbers, like the average person can't understand that. So like, how are you translating these numbers, right? How are you helping people understand? Like taxes are traditionally like a difficult thing for people to understand, right? Like how does the tax bill break out? Like what is the impact of tax abatements? How do we think about like the impact that's going to have on like school funding? How's the school funding formula work? Like these are all very complicated issues that like I was able to like talk to people about very normally. Like, look, I understand this and I understand it so well that I can explain it to you in like a very, very elementary fashion. And I think that's when people are like, wait, like this is real, like this is really talent, right? Because I think the person who doesn't actually understand something, like they say they understand it, but then they can't explain it to you. But like if you can really, really understand something, you can explain it to someone like they're a second grader.
What's your playbook for understanding something? If let's say you find about something, you got to know everything about it in like 30 minutes. What do you do? This was before the ChatGPT days.
Yeah, before ChatGPT. I don't know. I mean, I think I just read a lot, right? Like like naturally though, even like outside of when I'm like really digging into a topic, like naturally I tend to read a lot about like what's going on in the world, like different things that like interest me. So that like you constantly have this base that's being built up so that over time, like now you're making these connections, but it's not like, oh, I just like one day had to read 500 pages and like understand this thesis. It's like over time I've like sort of developed this sort of brain trust of different things that are happening. And like now I can connect the dots.
Yeah. So at this point in your life, you're around 20 years old and you got a lot going on. You're in college, you got everything else going on in life. You're directly involved in JC's Board of Education. You were fully able to see behind the curtain, per se. What was the biggest, what did I get myself into moment? Do you mind sharing any details from that?
I think the biggest recognition was that there was a lot of politics at play, right? I was the 5th vote on a 9-person board. So that meant like I was basically the swing vote. Like I could basically say like this person was going to be in charge, or this person was going to be in charge. And like literally my first vote, I was the last vote. It was a 4-4 board, and I had to determine who the president was going to be. So I guess a lot of pressure when you're 20 years old, just like walking into this game, right? Like, oh, like I am going to decide who runs a $776 million budget. Like what's going to happen there? And I remember being pressured on both sides, right? Like people in different like lobbying groups who were calling me all the time, like, hey, and like they would call people who I knew, right?
Oh.
So it was like not only are you getting calls from the people directly, but like they're calling your friends to call you. And so that's the first time where I was like, wait, what is this game, right? Like this, I can't even trust that the person who's calling me is calling me out of their self-interest, or are they calling me because someone else called them to call me? And now suddenly it's like, okay, like who can you trust? Like what does this game look like?
I was going to say, did that change how you viewed the world and maybe, you know, your sense of like who was a friend and who was just there to get something out of you?
Well, I think it changes your perception of trust 100%, right? Like you're just like, okay, like how does trust work? Like who can I trust? But the interesting thing about politics, and I think this is like a lesson for people who like want to be in the game, is like you need to understand politics is sort of like a web, right? So it's kind of like this thing of like, okay, here's one person, here's another person, like what's their connection? But like now we're mapping hundreds of people in this sort of web, right? And that's why it takes time. Like good politicians have kind of been in the game a while, like understand all these different systems and how they work. But like, you know, when I know that someone is calling me because someone else has called them, like now I know, okay, this person is connected to this person, right? And they're willing to do them favors. Okay, and like this person is connected to this person. And like these people feel positively about each other, right? And like what you also start to find out is so many of these people are related, right? You're like, oh, wait, like that's their cousin, or like that's their husband, or like that's their like, you know, like second cousin, right? And so like as you start to understand that game, you also understand like, oh, actually like power is very concentrated in like a smaller group of people. Even though there's like thousands and tens of thousands of voters, the people who are like really behind the scenes as operators, it's like a very small group of people.
Yeah. So do you think there's sort of a Game of Thrones when it comes to this web, and maybe is there a bigger spider per se at play?
I don't know if there's a Game of Thrones as much as there is like musical chairs, right?
Okay, interesting.
Like it's like people are moving around and these relationships are changing, right? And that's why like politics, the biggest thing you can do in politics, like the best thing you can have is information. Like it is very much an information economy, right? Like if you understand what's going on, like, and you have an edge on information, it like dramatically will increase like your ability to be successful.
Where did you find that edge in information at that time in your life?
Oh, I mean, at that time in my life, I didn't really know much, man.
Yeah.
I was kind of like flying blind, right? I'm like, okay, what does my gut say? Like, should I trust this person? Should I go this way? Should I go that way? And I made mistakes. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, it's not like I would just always guess right. The guy that I elected as board president, right? The next year, the end of the next year, he gets a dual indictment from the Department of Justice and from the Attorney General, one for bribery and one for embezzlement. So like this guy that I'm like, oh, like I think he's doing an okay job. Then comes out that like the police and the FBI are both after him and lock him up.
There's like a joke about politics. Like you're not doing a good job unless you get indicted and end up in prison.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. Yeah.
We'll cut it out.
Look, I mean, and the case was really interesting too, right? Like the amount of money for which he was willing to sell his soul, right? Or like willing to like, you know, like risk everything. Like there was $5,000 he took in like a coffee mug. And there was like $25,000 or something that he embezzled to like then go on a trip to Hawaii. And I'm like, dude, this is your entire life that you're risking for $30,000.
What did that teach you about people?
I think it just teaches you that people are greedy, right? And like people have, like a lot of people just don't have the temperament to be in public office. Because imagine you're being entrusted with hundreds of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions, right? And you can't control yourself over like $10,000, right? Like I think that so often you're getting the wrong people in public office who are there for their own personal gain. And if you're there for your personal gain, like you're going to get as much out of the system as you can, right? Yeah. Like any easy money, like, yeah, let me take that money and sort of run with it. And that's why I think it's like, you know, we need good people. We need principled people to be in politics.
Yeah.
Where does that leave like the constituents for like each of these districts? And like, how do they trust their elected officials?
I think in New Jersey, unfortunately, like most people don't trust them, right? And I think there's been deteriorating trust over time, right? Like I think people's trust in media and people trust in elected officials has like gone down severely. Like trust in government is on an all-time low, right? Like why would you trust your government officials, right? Like when you're constantly seeing reports about indictments, when you're constantly seeing reports about things that are happening. I'm like, I'll give you another example just for Jersey City's context, right? Like consider this, right? Jersey is like a very democratic city, like very like plus 30 Dem, okay? In 2012, 2013, the FBI comes in and like indicts a whole bunch of people in the Healy administration, so the former mayor of Jersey City. Okay, so like a councilman goes to jail, like some of his like staff members go to jail, and then do you know what happens the next year? Obama endorses that guy for re-election. I mean, that guy ends up losing because the people of Jersey City are like, okay, his whole staff just got indicted. Like people on the staff just got indicted, so like we're not going to go and support this guy because like clearly there's something that's wrong here. But like that guy was supported by the Democratic president who just won re-election. And so like, why are you trusting that person, right? Like, how are you going to look at that and be like, how does this make sense? Your Department of Justice and the FBI just came after these guys and now you're with them, you know?
Makes you question that web, huh? Is there a particular experience or decision during that time on the board that stands out as like your defining moment?
I don't know if it was my defining moment, but I think a lot of people on the school board like don't do much. Like that's what I sort of realized is like it's kind of like a stagnant board. And I was very focused on like passing bills. I was like, no, I have a legislative power and like I'm going to use it. And so the first bill that we passed was to get a student member on the school board, right? Okay. Because like, what did I run on, right? Forgotten stakeholders. And so like, yeah, sure, I was 20, but then I'd be 21 and I'll be 22 and I'll be 23 and I'm not planning to stay here forever. How can I ensure that that one thing that I talked about is always going to be resolved? Well, if I can get a student elected onto the Board of Education who sits there, who will constantly be elected by young people, like I have solved the problem that I said I was there to do. And so I was able to get that bill passed my first year on the school board, and that bill then became a model statewide. Like the governor of New Jersey then said to people around the state of New Jersey, hey, you should actually look at that bill in Jersey City and you should pass it in your district.
Wow. How did you advocate for yourself, man? I mean, that's probably one of the best things that you're at, like in terms of not only you did good work, but you made it a case for other people to follow in your footsteps.
Sometimes I can do a better job than others. I think in this case, it was kind of like, look, I didn't even realize how impactful this bill would be. It was just like my little thing. And I was new to politics, right? I think had I been more seasoned, I would have understood like, oh, how do you leverage the media? Like, how do you leverage contacts and like within government? But because I was so new to the game, like I didn't quite understand it. But then like, 5 years down the line, as people were looking for models, people started to look at Jersey City and say, hey, you know what? Like, that's really interesting what they did there. And they kind of understood that I was a young person who had been elected and like sort of like, how did I solve the problem that I was going after?
Did you ever feel like you had to like balance your identity or your role in representing minority communities, not like just students, but also like Desi communities and other minority communities in JC, but also pushing for big changes and having to find support from other sources? Like I think one of the big things that we were talking about when it comes to politics is you got to kind of like scratch backs and you have to be able to like get behind some things that sometimes may include stuff that you're not a huge fan of in order for the quote unquote greater good or something. Did you ever find yourself in that moment or that experience yet, or was that something that came later on?
Well, I don't think I perceive it that way. Like I kind of think like you can and you should be authentic towards who you are, right? Like you should navigate things like the way that you feel most strongly. But I do think there is a thing about like you're representing all people and not just one subset of people, right? Like, and so now you have a responsibility and obligation towards all people. And I think that's really important to understand as an elected official. Like, I don't just represent Muslims. I don't just represent young people. I don't just represent like people of color. I represent everybody. And so like whenever I'm advocating for a decision, like, is it in the greater good of everyone?
There's a quote out there that says that if you target something to everyone, you're not targeting the thing to anyone at all. How do you feel about that, especially when it comes to such a diverse city like JC? There's a ton of other cities in the U.S. that are like it, that have people like you who want to kind of follow in your footsteps. How did you build a case that, is it a science or an art where when it comes to getting support for it? Or, do you think you just got to kind of like play your wins and be able to target, have the science to be able to target different groups in a different way?
I think it's important to just do constant outreach, right? Like let people humanize you, let people know who you are. Yeah. I remember one of the things that shocked me the most was 2017 when they passed the Muslim ban, right? So 2016, obviously I'd run for office, I'd lost, but like Jersey City is like 10 to 12% Muslim, right? As a population, probably even larger in the school system. And I remember when the Muslim ban happened, like people coming to me and being like, oh, where are all the Muslims in Jersey City? And to me, it was so confusing, right? Because for us, like, oh, I've grown up around all Muslims. So I'm like, yeah, like everyone I know here is Muslim. Like, what are you talking about? But it made me realize that like our community did not do well in terms of integration with other communities. We didn't like go out and like build these relationships and like build these bonds. And so I made it very intentional about like, hey, like I want people to understand like what is a Muslim, right? Like who is a Muslim? Like what is a Muslim like? And like, look, I'm here to advocate for your causes too. Like what are things that are important to you, right? Like for the Indian community, like was Diwali like something that was really important? Like, hey, how can we get that as like a holiday? How can we advocate with you, right? Like Eid is going to be a holiday. Like how can we get Diwali to be a holiday? How can we think about, you know, what are certain things that the Filipino community might be thinking about? What are things that the Italian community might be thinking about, right? Like, so you want to do that outreach and sort of like humanize yourself with all these groups for them to understand like, hey, this is not an outsider. Like this is someone who like understands us and like, you know, wants to break bread with us.
What do you think was your greatest lesson about leadership, advocacy, and resilience? I know that's a big question that's going to come up. That's something people are going to ask for you to pass on to others. You institutionalized or created something that in JC, which is called the Ali Leadership Institute, which focuses on that. But I wanted to know what kicked it off, but also like what specific mantra or saying that you kind of keep in the back of your mind to keep yourself focused on being a leader, being resilient.
Yeah, I think the Leadership Institute sort of came out of this idea that like we looked around when I got elected and my sister and I were like, wow, there's no young people in this sphere, right? Wow. Like, I mean, you got to remember, like, this is pre-2018. 2018 is when Ilhan Omar gets elected, Rashida Tlaib gets elected, right? AOC gets elected. And so, like, this is a whole brand new wave of elected officials who, like, you know, gain national prominence. But, like, I was in the game before they were. So, like, that wasn't even a thing or a model that I could look toward and say, like, oh, like, these are people who, like, have captured, like, national attention. And so I kind of had to like build something on my own to be like, okay, like what does the local infrastructure look like? And so we started to train young people to be like, hey, like how do you knock on doors? How do you get petitions? How do you build power? And I think it's been really important to me of like continuing to build power, continuing to empower young people. And for me, that form of leadership is just like, you know, it's about being selfless, right? Like how do I empower the next generation? Yeah. Like it's cool to be the first, but you don't want to be the last, right? Like that I think is really important to me.
What was the circumstances of you leaving that position and then ended up pursuing a degree at Harvard?
So the timeline is really interesting because it all kind of happens at the same time, right? So January of 2021, so fall of 2020, I enroll in Harvard Law School, right? And it's like during the pandemic, like, you know, it's sort of like world is like we're all sort of navigating, figuring out what's going on. January of 2021, I get elected as the president of the school board, right? And this is like a really big deal because, you know, my school board was like much older than I was. I was by far the youngest member on the board. And so they elected me to be in leadership during the pandemic to sort of figure this out, which I think was like a huge, huge honor. And sort of a testament to like the work that we had put in for the last 3 years. So they run this headline in the Jersey Journal. It's like Ali makes history again in Jersey City, right? First time when I was 20, I was elected. Now I'm 23, I'm the president of the board. And 2 weeks later, like I have this cough, right? And I go to the doctor and I'm like, all right, like just do an x-ray, like figure out what's going on. And doctor's like, hey, like, you know, there's some sort of infection. Like we should go get a CT scan, just like figure out what's going on. So CT scan comes back. And I still remember like that night, basically the doctor calls me and he's like, hey, listen, like you have advanced stage cancer. And like, I was really at a loss of words, right? I was like, what do you mean? Like, I don't smoke, I don't drink, I'm practicing Muslim, right? Like I don't have these risk factors. Like there's no history of cancer in my family. And I think it was really, really hard because it was like, you know, my whole family was there. And so I remember I go to the restroom and I'm like, I just start crying, right? I'm like, for 10 minutes, I'm just like bawling. Like, this is so unfair. Like, why would God do this to me? Like, I'm like serving my community, right? Like, I feel like I'm like, I've like achieved it or like made it in some way. And I remember as I'm like spiraling down these thoughts, I sort of start thinking about like different questions in my mind. And I sort of have this question of like, okay, if this is it, right? If like this is all I have, like what do I want to do right now? Like where do I want to be? Like, do I want to have some like, you know, trip to Aruba? Is there something on the bucket list that I want to sort of achieve? And what was so empowering for me is I literally looked in the mirror and I was like, you know what? I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing. Like, this is exactly who I want to be. This is exactly what I want to be doing. And like, so, you know, like if Allah has more time for me, like he'll give me more time. But if Allah is happy with me, Like, alhamdulillah, I'm happy.
Like, just to give some perspective, like stage 4 cancer has a 1 to 9% survival rate, best case scenario. Was those kind of numbers, like, was that like something that was going around in your mind at that time, or what was your immediate reaction, and what did you do once you left, knowing that you were diagnosed with something that could probably end your life, not in years, but probably in months or even less?
Yeah, I mean, look, I got very lucky in many ways, right? Where like I got enrolled into a clinical trial. So there was a clinical trial at Memorial Sloan Cancer Center, and it's like these circumstances, right? Like I feel like there is always like a destiny part of this. Like I look back at my life and I'm like, destiny plays a role in like who I am today. So that cancer center is like one of the best cancer centers in the world. That cancer center, the year before, had just signed a contract with my mom's insurance because she was a teacher in New York City that like allowed you to enroll there. The only reason I even get to go there, because at this point I'm 23, I would have been kicked off pre-Obamacare, but because of Obamacare, your parents' insurance extends till 26. Yeah. So now I'm under 26. My mom's insurance allows you to go there. They have a clinical trial for the exact kind of cancer that I have, right? So I enroll into this cancer hospital. The next week after I get into the cancer hospital, they come to Harvard Law School and they're like, we need one legal intern for this summer. Now I don't tell them I have cancer, right? I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, if this is really meant to be, it's meant to be, right? I'm not gonna tell them. So I go through the motions. I like get the offer, and I remember I tell the GC at the end, like general counsel, I'm like, hey, it's kind of funny. Like I was gonna see you this summer anyway. He's like, Musab, what are you talking about? And I was like, bro, I just got admitted to your hospital for stage 4 cancer. And so then that summer, right, I'm spending in the legal office on like the 20th floor. And on the 14th floor was chemotherapy. And then my last day of work was my last day of chemotherapy. Now, keep in mind, work started in the summer in June. I started chemotherapy in February. And it just happened to be the destiny of like, I finished the last day of work because of the last day of chemotherapy. Like, I look back at that and I'm like, how can I not think of destiny, right? Like, how can I not look back at that and be like, wow, something was meant to be here, right? Like this part of the story, like how can I like, sort of look back and be like, oh, I have no faith, right? Like I think you have to hear a story like that and like live through that and be like, how is that possible?
Bro, I mean, like if you think about like navigating that time, like chemotherapy is, from everything that I've heard, like so destructive to your capabilities as a person and everything in your life. I'm sure you changed not only outwardly, image-wise. I'm sure you struggle with so many things, and it's not like you have to talk about it right now, but how did you navigate that? And where'd you find the strength?
Yeah. So my first chemo was the day before my birthday, right? So February 26th is the chemo. And the thing is like whenever the nurses come in, right, they always check your wristband. So I don't know if when you get admitted to a hospital, right, like whenever they do a procedure, they gotta like check your wristband. But obviously when you're doing chemo is so fascinating as like a medical advancement. Because like the kind of like drugs that they put in me, if you were to get it on your skin, it would burn your skin. Right? But they inject it into your veins. Like how, like that is like, think about how insane that is, right? The nurse comes in a robe and like, is wearing the whole gown and is wearing gloves and is like, hey, if this gets on your skin or my skin, it will burn our skin. But we are going to inject this into your veins, into your body. Okay? And so like they have to make sure your IV is like perfect, like it is in you, because they literally like, hey, if the IV is not in you and this goes in you, it's just gonna like burn through your muscle, right?
No pressure, yeah.
But like I remember, so these nurses are all coming in, and they're all saying happy birthday to me, right? Because my birthday's the next day. God. So they're like, oh, happy birthday, and I'm literally like, it doesn't feel like a happy birthday, It's like I'm literally about to go through chemotherapy. And I don't think like, I don't want to get into the whole chemotherapy and like what it feels like, but it's like, you just got to imagine like, what is the drug trying to do, right? This goes back to like the biology background, right? Okay. So chemotherapy like is essentially trying to target fast growing cells, any fast growing cells in your body they're trying to kill, right? So this is like why all your hair falls out, right? It's fast growing. Like, when you think about like your esophageal lining, as you think about like your nails, or you think about like any sorts of cells in your body that are fast growing, like it's trying to kill. But effectively, like it feels like it's killing everything in your body. Like everything in your body kind of feels like, oh, like this is like, it's like going through the motions. But I remember the day after my first chemo, it is my birthday. And I'm getting all these messages that are like, happy birthday, like you've crushed it. And like, you got to think about the outside perspective, right? Like whenever you wish someone a happy birthday, you kind of like, they're on your mind for a second. You're like, oh, what has the last year been like? Right. Yeah. And like the last year for someone outside looking in, because at this point my cancer wasn't public. I had graduated with my master's degree. I'd gone into Harvard Law School, and I'm the president of the school board. Like, wow, he's crushing it. And I'm sitting there like, you guys have no idea, right? Like looks are so deceiving, right? Like you never really know what someone's going through. I think like that was like a really big lesson I learned through cancer is like, from the outside looking in, I'm crushing it. Like you would look at my life and say like, wow, this is that guy.
All the aunties are asking why their kids aren't like you. I'm sure you got.
Yeah. It's like
all the cousins hate you.
and then I'm sitting there like, wow, like this is like, it's like so tough. Like people have no idea. And I do think the physical stuff was kind of hard because like the next month, like all my hair falls out. Right. So like, it's not just the hair on your head. You're talking about your eyebrows, your eyelashes, your beard. Right. And like, dude, the last time I didn't have a beard, I was like a sophomore in high school. Right. Like it's been a long time since that.
I don't think, especially like around that time of I think it was like late 2010s, like a brown boy not having like the comb over quiff thing is such a big deal. It's like, what's going on, homie?
Yeah.
And I remember the first post you did about it, announcing it. My stomach dropped because you're right. At that point, everyone saw you as somebody like this champion for success, this somebody who had been overachieving maybe, and just seeing that, it's like, whoa, like it's almost as if you see this momentous force just hit an immovable object. I want to ask you maybe a more personal question. What was like your relationship with God at that point?
I think I've always had like a decent relationship with God. I do think like, look, I think the cancer really made me question, right? Like I told you from the beginning, like I had that moment where I was like, this is so unfair. Like it's so messed up. Like what did I do to deserve this? Right. Like, and again, like, cause I had felt like I really was an advocate for our community. Like in my elected position in particular, like I had felt like I was doing this for all the right reasons, right? Like I wasn't doing this for like personal gain. Like the school board pays you nothing. It's a $0 position. Okay. You're in charge of millions of dollars. You take hours of your time and you are a volunteer. Like you do not get paid for this. And so I kind of was like, wow, like this is so messed up. But I really do think like, in many ways, like alhamdulillah, cancer was like such a blessing, right? Because I'm telling you, like the destiny behind it, as I would like think through all the things that I went through, right? And also to be able to work at that hospital, right? To be able to see like the other side of it and to be able to have conversations. My cancer doctor is really funny. Like he used to say to me, he was like, Musab, you're actually like, you can't die. He was like, you can't die. Like you're literally my most inspirational patient, And I was like, doc, like you can't put this pressure on me, Like, bro, it's you actually. Like if we're being honest of like who's in charge here, like you are the one controlling my treatment, right? But alhamdulillah, like I think you come out of that the other side and you're really strengthened in your relationship with God, and you're like, you know what, alhamdulillah, like God's gonna get you through whatever you need to get through.
Alhamdulillah, how long did it take for you to beat cancer? And once you got out of you were cancer free, what did you set your sights on?
So I mean, we talked about this a little bit briefly before the interview, but like I knew that like getting cancer meant that there was like a massive chink in my armor, right? Because like to your point about like overachieving, like my whole brand had been built on being the most capable, right? Like always able to get the job done, right? And like no chinks in the armor. And like when I got cancer for the first time in my life, I had this like massive hole. Like it was like a very real vulnerability that I had, and I was like very unsure like how to navigate it, how to deal with it. So the treatment, it was like 12 rounds of chemotherapy, and alhamdulillah, I was done by August. So it was like actually a very quick sort of like turnaround. And so the first thing I did is I was like, the front page of the paper had said that I had stage 4 cancer. So a lot of people kind of like knew that, and I'd lost all my hair. And so like if you saw me, like you knew there was something wrong. And so I was like, okay, I got to do something to remind people that like I'm okay now. And so I ran a marathon.
Why a marathon?
I had never run a 10K. I had never run a half marathon. I just sort of like skipped to the marathon.
It's like as if you were trying to kill yourself.
No. Well, I was like, look, if cancer can't kill me, like how is this going to stop me? And I just think it's like, it is an objectively hard thing to do. And like you finish a marathon, you have so much respect for people who run marathons. Like I think that is like it's very true. Like marathoners will all tell you too, like they're like, oh, the first 20 miles or whatever and the last 6 miles are like the real marathon. And you're also just like, dude, how do I get to 20 miles? Like, what are you talking about? But then like you're in that moment where you're like, you did the 20 miles and like, you're like, oh, okay, like this is going to be easy. And those last 6 miles are like death. Like it is literally like mind versus matter. Like you are really pushing yourself in a way that is like unreal. And so like you do your first one, you're like, oh my God, I have so much respect for the guys that do these. And so I've done the Jersey City Marathon every year, kind of like, you know, the first one. So and also, again, this is like, it's like the destiny part of this, right? So I beat the cancer. I'm not running for re-election. Jersey City announces that they're going to have their first marathon in 30 years. They haven't had a marathon in 30 years. I'm not even 30 years old. So in my lifetime, they've never had a marathon, right? And I'm like, man, I'm the hometown kid. Like, this is my city. I love this place. Like, I got to do this race, right? And so they had a half marathon option and a marathon option. I'm like, no, I can't do half. I can't do the half, right? Like, what does it look like to do the half, right? Like, I got to do the full marathon. And so, like, I did the marathon the first year. I've done it, like, every year since.
Did you train up to this point or you just raw dog this?
No, you can't. Dude, listen, the people who tell you I can just go off my couch and run a marathon, they're lying to you. Like, that is just, it is an insane thing to do. I did procrastinate, like, my training, which was, like, not good. So I had trained up to a half marathon in December. And then I sort of like fell back. I was like, oh, like I had some injuries. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna, like, the race I think was in April. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna like chill out for a little bit. And then what happened was I didn't realize this, but like it was Ramadan the month before the marathon. So the marathon was the day after Eid. Okay. So now I was like, wait, I have to train to be able to run 26 miles while fasting. And so like literally the Ramadan was the month I trained the most. Like I trained all through Ramadan, fasting the entire time, like one meal a day effectively, right? Like, and then just ran it after Eid.
How, man? How?
It felt amazing though, because I was eating during the marathon at least, right? So like you're training fasted, and so then you run the marathon. You're like, oh, this is amazing. Like, oh, what do you mean? I can just drink water? I can just drink water right now? That's amazing. Yeah.
How did you get to a marathon? Like, what's the key to like building yourself up? Because I think there's a lot of crossover in the pain and the getting through the determination to actually, you know, cross the finish line and everything and all other challenges that you've been facing ever since beating cancer.
Yeah, I think it is a lot of like of consistency, right? Like consistency is a big part of it, but I also think there's a level of like, you know, mental fortitude, right? Like you have to be able to take your mind into a place where you're like, look, like I can achieve anything. Like I can do this. And I think like, look, during the cancer thing, I don't think there was a day where I ever thought I was going to lose. Like, I don't think there was ever a day where I was like, I'm going to lose this battle. Like there was never a moment where I would thought to myself like, oh, like I'm going to lose to cancer. I was like, no, like the reason I stayed in law school is because I was like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna graduate, you know, in a couple of years, like we're gonna figure this thing out, right? Otherwise, like why waste my time doing that if I thought I was gonna lose, right? I was like, no, like we're winning this battle.
What did you do after that marathon? What was your next goal in life? Was it to enjoy now that you kind of had this second chance at life? Was it to, like you said, now you kind of had like a new retrospective or perspective on life now that you beat cancer? You're going through life as a marathon runner year over year. You're an overachiever. What was the next kind of thing you wanted to achieve?
I think the next thing that happened kind of was like also kind of like an accident. Like I left the school board, right? Like I don't run for re-election that November. I get a 22-year-old Muslim elected, right? Because it's also legacy is really important, right? So like you can be the first to something, you don't want to be the last to like be in that position. So I go back to law school, and my friends in law school are kind of like, dude, you must be kind of bored. Like you used to do law school and cancer and the school board, and now you're just doing law school. Like, you know, like this is not who you are. And so I'd never been in student government, and they elected me student body president, which was really, really interesting. Like I think like navigating the halls of power in like such an elite space, I think was also like a very different experience for me. Oh, wow. Because instead of like, you know, being with people who are like your regular constituents who care about their kids, your constituent, like if you can call them that, is like kids whose like father's like the chief of staff to Joe Biden. Now it's like, oh, like the way they think about the world is very different. Like what is okay and what's not okay, and like what they want you to fight for. And I also think like, you know, at some level in the elites, like we have gotten out of touch. Like I think this is when we talk more broadly about the Democratic Party and like, how do we think about like introspect about like where the election results went? Like I remember, when I was at HLS, like the student government sponsored like the World Cup, like to watch the World Cup, which like you would assume is super non-controversial, right? The Qatari World Cup, like it was like everybody wanted to watch it, like this huge thing that's coming together. We're right into the pandemic, right? So like everyone wants to come back and reconnect. And like students were protesting because they were like, oh, like there was like labor violations and like how they built it. And like true, like absolutely, like I understand like there was migrant labor that was used and like, there's a lot of underlying things that we can talk about in terms of like, what does that mean? And how do we as a law school like sort of like deal with that? But to be like, hey, like we have to boycott and like cancel this, like the World Cup, like the Qatari government does not care that like this school is not going to come watch this. Like we are doing more harm to like the broader public by not allowing people to have the social connection by watching the World Cup, right? Like, and I think that's where sometimes like we see the party sort of being out of touch with like everyday people, because there was no one in Jersey City, like there weren't people here who were like, oh my God, like we can't watch this because of labor violations.
Right. It's interesting. You end up graduating from Harvard Law School, doing really, really well. Part of your story is rejecting or turning down local or opportunities that are actually very lucrative, right? And that'll kind of help you, pursue more things on your bucket list. Tell me the story of why you turned it down.
Yeah, so the traditional pathway after Harvard is to go take a corporate law job. Starting salary is about $250,000 your first year, which is like a ton
better
of
than
money.
a doctor. Yeah,
it is more than a doctor. So like, my mom was upset again. She's like, "Dude, you turned down medical school, now you were turned down the salary. Like, what's going on with you?" But I was like, I think I went back to that moment of like when I first got cancer, and I was sort of like regrounding myself of like, look, like what's important to me, right? Like, I don't know how much time I have, right? Like in the time perspective of like, oh, like I have a long time to like make change in my community. Like, yeah, you go work at a law firm for 10 years and like you make a ton of money and like now you have the ability to give back. But like, if I don't know that I have that time, like I don't know that that's real, then like, why is it that like I'm going to be chasing the like short-term thing, right? Or effectively short-term thing. Like, why not just go after the thing that I want, which is like to make a difference and to continue to serve and to be in public service. And so, turned down the law firm job, went into like, democracy work and like did some policy work on voting rights. And now running for mayor in Jersey City.
Amazing. We had a pretty electric conversation before we started recording. And one of the most interesting things that you said was that all modern presidents go to hell, or maybe more poetically said, they don't go to heaven. What do you think is the hardest truth that you've had to accept about our political system?
I just think what's so tough is that the majority of people, like the vast majority of people, are very undereducated about what is the most important institution in the world. I don't think people quite understand like how powerful the United States government is, right? Like, I think sometimes people, even like companies like SpaceX, right? The US government could regulate SpaceX out of existence. I mean, like, okay, I'll give you a great example. So like the subway system, right, in New York City, like engineering marvel. Do you know why the engineering system in like the bottom of Manhattan is like all sorts of lanes that are like all sorts of different things? It's because private companies were originally building these different trams and these different lines. And the government came in and was like, oh, actually, this is a really cool project. It's ours now. Like, sure, they compensated them for it. But these companies then all became part of the government, right? And now the MTA runs the subway system. And so like the US government is immensely powerful, right? Like you think about like our foreign influence, you think about like our military power, you think about like the value of the US dollar, right? Yeah. Like central reserve currency in the world. This is the most powerful institution in the entire world. And the vast majority of its citizens are like, do not appreciate that power. Like they don't understand, like as an American citizen, like your vote and your influence here is so powerful. It is more powerful than so many people in so many other countries. Where like, you have dictators where like you can't have any political influence. You can't have political power. Like here, the rules are set up to like actually permit you that if you are involved and you can connect and convince people, you can change so much.
Yeah. What do you think is the most beneficial thing the U.S. government has the power to do and could do right now in the world and global stage?
So, and this is I think this is kind of controversial because it's like, how do we think about it right now in terms of like what's happening in Gaza? Because I think it's doing a horrendous job in terms of Gaza. But a lot of what the U.S. does is also like border enforcement, right? Like the U.S. can kind of decide what borders to enforce and what borders to not enforce. And clearly in Israel and Gaza, right? Like they're not enforcing a border, right? Like they're allowing sort of this like annexation of the West Bank that's sort of happening. Also in Ukraine, right? Like the U.S. right now is saying like, hey, we want to maintain the border as it is. I mean, in Taiwan, as you think about China and Taiwan, right? Like the U.S. can enforce a border or not enforce a border. Like this sort of integrity of borders that exists in the modern world, I would argue a lot of it is supported by the fact that the U.S. government wants to maintain borders as they exist today. And if the U.S. government was like, you know what, tomorrow, hey, everybody, you're on your own, like figure it out. I'm like, you can see like empires like start to reemerge, right? Of countries taking over other countries. Because like what incentive do they have to like remain within their borders?
Do you think that's where history is kind of headed?
I hope not.
This rebirth of empires?
I hope not. I mean, I think that, you know, there is something to be said about the power of like, you know, allowing people to have their own democracies, and allowing people to like elect their own leaders. And I think that it is a very costly proposition for there not to be borders, right? Of like countries that fight and empires that like want to rule one another, especially in a world where there's nukes. Yeah. You know, you start to get nukes involved and like, you know, and all it takes is a couple countries being like, you know what, I'm going to push these buttons. And
are you worried about it? Do you think it's actually going to happen? Do you think it's real?
I mean, it's real. It's definitely real. I mean, do you think it's going to happen? I mean, who knows? Who knows? I think that the problem is like there are certain people with red buttons right now that like you can't really trust or game theory out like what they can and cannot do or will and will not do. And I would just say that on the U.S. context, I think in the international context.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion around specifically how America spends its money. And there's always these quotes that kind of come up on the internet, like, oh, if we took 1% of our budget, we could solve this world issue, that world issue, that world issue. What's your perspective on how the U.S. spends money?
I think that the U.S. obviously spends way too much money on its defense budget, right? Like there's so much military spending that we have. But I don't know. I think there's like, the thing is there's an infinite number of problems to be solved, right? Like there's the problem of world hunger. There's the problem of homelessness. There's a problem of like different vaccines and different like sort of world health outcomes. Yeah. And I think that there's also broader questions around like, how do people domestically feel? And I think this election was a reflection of that, right? It's like people domestically feel ignored, and feel as though the country needs to do more for like everyday U.S. citizens. And I think that is a tension that we have to sort of resolve before I can be like, if we just had this money, what would we do for the world, right?
Yeah, I think more and more Muslims align themselves to Trump this election than last election. Why do you think we live in a world where Trump won by a landslide versus competition? Obviously, there are the blatant things, but what do you think was the real reason?
I think that the Democratic Party... So the interesting thing is like Trump actually got less votes than he got, I think, in either 2016 or 2020. Like, you know, so like unlike the pure numerical side of things, like it's not like his vote count like dramatically increased. I think it's more so a reflection of like the Democratic Party continues to run on the message of like, we're not Trump. And like, that's just not good enough, right? Like in 2016, it wasn't good enough. In 2020, like Trump had done a whole bunch of things. And so like you ran Biden and you won. But like, again, in 2024, that wasn't good enough, right? It's not good enough to just say like, we're not the other guy, right? Like Democrats really have to stand for something. Yeah. And I think for a lot of people, they have felt as though the Democrats stand for the elites, or they stand for like very specific minority groups, and they feel left out. And I think that's what you see happening sort of across the board.
Do you think Muslim Americans really make a difference in participating in politics?
I think they can. I think right now we're not very well organized. Our voter turnout rate is not nearly as high as it needs to be. But like our community is like exceptionally wealthy, like as you think about comparatively, right? Like we tend to do very well. We tend to be very well educated. We tend to get good jobs. We tend to, grow businesses. And I think if you're able to pool your money to be effective, you can like have a big influence in politics, particularly the way that like U.S. elections work because of money in politics. And I do know that there are some national Muslim donors who like, both parties like pay attention to, and like they're aware of like, okay, like how is this person thinking about different issues? And like these are key donors that are relied on. It's just that they are so small in number relative to some other outsized donors, right? So like if we were a lot more organized, I think like there's so much that we could do. And we're there. Like I think as a community, like we actually have so many doctors, so many pharmacists, so many physical therapists, so many people who are engineers, so many people who are, like professors. Like we have that within our community. But they haven't been sort of like centralized towards like advancing political goals.
So not enough influence into the decision making for these politicians.
I was going to ask, do you feel like politics and the political system today can be used as a force for good, or is it just an autonomous machine at this point?
I think it can be used as a force for good. It's just a question of like who becomes that person, is that force, right? I mean, look, one of the key reasons I like didn't go into practicing law and like went into politics is I remember having this thought where like, okay, prosecutors, right? Like people who sort of like bring cases, they have something called prosecutorial discretion, right? They can decide what cases to bring, what cases not to bring, right? So now that Trump has won, like all these cases are sort of winding down from these prosecutors. Judges decide the tilt of cases, right? And like if you have certain judges, like a panel of judges that are on a certain side, like you can kind of like predetermine how a case is going to go. So politicians both appoint prosecutors, they appoint judges, and they write the laws. So if you're asking me like who is the most powerful person in this system, it's not the attorney who's like, debating with the prosecutor or judge. It's the guy who's writing the law and appointing these people in these like central positions within the legal framework. And so to me, like if you have enough of the right people in those political spheres, you can actually like set up this whole system to be a real force for good.
Does that start at the local level, or does that start at the federal level?
I think it starts at the local level, right? So even the mayor gets to appoint like their municipal prosecutor, they appoint their municipal judges. The governor gets to appoint like statewide, and the state attorney general, and at the federal level, like they have their own system. So like it is at every level, right? It's not just it starts one place or it ends another place. Like it actually is at every level, and it exists. Like this is the system that we operate under.
Yeah. So what would be your playbook if Muslims wanted to have more of a say in where America is going, where the world is going? What would you say is a playbook for us to make a difference?
I think the playbook starts with being local, right? Like get active at your local level, get on a local community board, volunteer with local organizations, and like do stuff outside of just local Muslim communities, right? Like I think it's great that Muslims like, we pay our zakat, like we like get involved within the Muslim community and like we send tons of money back home, but like how much are we doing to improve the condition of like everyday Americans? Right? What are we doing for like the homeless population that's here in America? What are we doing to like, really like build bonds with other communities that are here? Because I think unfortunately a lot of like what has prevented us from really advancing as a community is like we're very insular, right? Like we see our people as like, oh, this is our people, like this group, this masajid, like this community center, versus like we should see the collective as our people. Right. I mean, if you think about Islamic history, I think there's like a very strong tradition of this, right? Where there's tons of hadith of the Sahaba saying like, if any person like was not able to eat, like they felt as though it was like a burden upon them, right? And like that didn't just mean Muslims, right? A lot of Islamic history, there were empires where the majority of the people who were there were non-Muslims. And so as you think about like, what does it mean to be an empire? What does it mean to be like, what does Islamic history say about like how we think about our community? Like our community is not just defined as the ummah of just Muslims. It's defined by like, okay, who are the people around us as well?
So what do you think is your goal with trying to become mayor? Working on this campaign, you look good, you look strong. What's the goal of actually becoming mayor? And is there an end goal? Is this a stepping stone on a bigger path, or what do you think?
Look, I think I just want to be the mayor. I think it's an incredible job to have. But to me, like there's so many issues that are taking place in Jersey City, right? Like as you've seen like sort of the income rates change, as you've seen like the population pyramid really change. I mean, you're talking about a city that's gone from like a median income of 51,000 to a median income of 91,000, right? Like dramatically changed in terms of income, dramatically changed in terms of like resident composition. And I think there are a lot of questions of like, okay, like who is benefiting? And how do we ensure that, the people who are voiceless have a voice, right?
Yeah.
Like, how are we ensuring that these community members who like no one is listening to also have a say in sort of what's happening?
Yeah. So what gave you success earlier in your life with politics was a winning story. What do you think is your winning story?
I think that I think in this case, our real like message is that we're someone who's from Jersey City and for Jersey City,
Okay.
right? Like, I've grown up there my whole life. I'm from there, but like, I'm fighting for everyone who's in that city, right? Like, it's not just for my people; it's for everybody who's in Jersey City. And I also think, like, you know, a secondary part of it is we think about like Jersey roots but a global reach, right? Which is the idea that like, look, like, yeah, I'm from Jersey City, like I'm a hometown kid, but like I have achieved success at some of the highest levels. I've been very successful in terms of like being at Tsinghua University in China, or like being at Harvard Law School, or achieving these sort of like national scholarships, these national fellowships. Like, there's so much optionality of like things I could have done, but like what I truly want to do is public service, right? Like, I want to be in Jersey City. And like, if the city gives me that opportunity, like, you know, there's nothing that'd make me happier.
Anything specific you plan on targeting?
Yeah,
it's like a project when if
I think
you get elected mayor.
I think the most important thing is affordability, right? Like, Jersey City now has the second highest rent in the country. Like, our rent is higher than San Francisco, which like, that is never a good position to be in. I mean, I think it's great in the demand side of like, wow, like so many people want to live in our city. But I think on the supply side, and also in like what kinds of housing are you building, like people being forced out, like that is a huge problem, right? Like, when the cultural fabric of a city is being torn apart, like that is a big deal, right? Like, you're tearing apart communities, you're tearing apart the ability of people to have dignity in where they live, right? And I think it's important to like, you know, provide different types of housing and like, you know, ensure that the people who are from a city get to remain there. And so we've been really advocating and fighting for, you know, tons of different housing reforms and making sure that we can build all sorts of housing, right? Like workforce housing, affordable housing, low income housing, and then also a lot of the market rate housing that's also necessary.
Yeah. Is there a piece of advice that you like giving, or that you feel like is really relevant to the times that you'd want everyone to hear?
There's a quote that I really, really like, which is that there's no amount of anxiety that can change the future, and there's no amount of guilt that can change the past. And I really like that because, you know, I think often we like look back at our failures sometimes and we're like, oh man, like if I just change this, or if I did that, or like, you know, like I feel bad about this thing. It's like, look, like you can reflect, but like the guilt isn't going to change the past, right? Like, you made a mistake, like it is what it is. You move forward. And then in terms of like, sometimes people become too future focused, right? Of like, you know, I could sit here thinking about this race and be like, oh, like we could do this, or like this could happen, or like this could happen, or this could happen. Like, the anxiety is not going to change the future, right? Like, it's going to happen. And so like, you kind of prepare for it. But like, you know,
I'm gonna steal that one. I'm gonna keep that in my back pocket.
Yeah.
A fun question. What are your favorite spots of JC? What's kind of like your gems, JC gems per se?
JC gems.
Let's say I'm taking someone to JC and we're trying to have 24 hours of just having pure JC. What's the route?
What's the route?
Where's the start?
All right.
Where's the spin move gonna happen?
The thing is, they're so like, okay, you got to hit some of the classics, right? That like, I think people don't even understand is part of JC, which is like, I'm going to group these together. Like, the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island are both Jersey City. New York City claims them, but like, they're ours, right? Go read the Supreme Court case, New Jersey versus New York. All right. Original addresses for both of them is in Jersey City. I think Liberty Science Center is also really incredible. I think a lot of people go as kids, but there's also like adult activities that happen there. But there's also like so many amazing spots to eat. There's also like bananas. Like, if you're like banana pudding, like ube and banana pudding is incredible. There's like a Filipino banana pudding spot. It's like absolutely incredible. There's like a pizza non-combo spot called Gulce. So like, you can have a chicken tikka naniza, which is basically like, imagine a cheese pizza, except instead of the bread they use, using naan bread, and then filling it up with chicken tikka. Like, this is like, these are some incredible spots that exist in Jersey City. And then you have places like Ratza, right, which has been rated like the best pizza in New York City by the New York Times, even though it's in Jersey City, right? I just think like, it's hard for me to come up with like a 24-hour itinerary, but I just think there's so many incredible places to look at. There's so many incredible neighborhoods. There's so many like hidden gems that sort of exist in the city. It's hard for me to just pick a couple of them. Although I will say, one of the newer ones is M by Mo Cafe. So Mo Cafe is here in Patterson. You guys have your Mo Cafe here, but the M by Mo Cafe in Jersey City actually has a full like dinner menu. and a full brunch menu, right? So you got halal steak there.
Yeah.
You have some like short ribs. I mean, it's incredible.
It's cool, man. It's cool. We're going to close off on kind of a fun note. Your dream dinner party. Musab, you get to pick 3 historical, influential, or fictional figures. Who's going to be at this dinner party? And you know what? Let's go crazy. It doesn't have to be 3.
Doesn't have to be 3. Oh man. Well, look, I think if I'm thinking about a dinner party, I think it's important to have perspective from like world leaders. If I can be like really cheating here, I think the Prophet ﷺ would be fantastic to have, right? Like I think that's like a cheat code right there. I think that if I could, I think there's also like, you know, if you're able to like talk to people from all different backgrounds, there's also certain people that like I want to understand their perspective and like the influence they've had on the world. Like Genghis Khan is a great example.
Yeah.
I mean, like I think it's like what 1 in 5 Asians is like related to Genghis Khan or something like that. Yeah. And it's just like an understanding of like, why did you feel like you had to like repopulate the world, reproduce the whole world? You know, like what went through your mind as you were like, hey, I need to leave my mark here, right? Like what? Because like so many people today are related to that person, right? To be like, okay, like I meet someone, I'm like, oh, are you from this part of the world? Like I've met your forefather, you know? like after the dinner party, you can tell the person that, right? Like, hey, I actually met the person that you were connected to. I also think it'd be really interesting to talk to a U.S. founder. So I think like either a Thomas Jefferson or like a George Washington, because you know the history of America includes Islam, right? Like there's this whole thing about like Thomas Jefferson's Quran, right? Yeah. But like the founders like had conversations about like could a Muhammadan be like a president, right? They didn't call them Muslims or like they didn't understand the concept of Islam, so they called them like, you know, followers of Muhammad, right? So Mohammedans, like, could they be Muslims? And could they be like, you know, influential people in America? And I think it'd be so fascinating to talk to someone who like, you know, was actually like in the room, like writing these documents, having these intentions, and to really understand like, okay, like was our community really supposed to be here? And like, how do we think about our community being part of like this whole system? Yeah. Because there are some like primary source documents about this, but I think it'd be so fascinating to talk to someone like that and be like, look, like, you know, as you think about my community and like this religion, like freedom of religion, I know it was like including us, but like how was that perceived and how was that thought about? So I'll just leave it at those 3 for now.
Amazing. Maybe just to add on to it, what are 2 world leaders that you think really need to close the beef?
Close the beef?
Yeah. Just end it.
Squash it. Look, I'd love if Kim Jong-un ended the beef with everybody and reopened North Korea. Like I just think like it sucks for the people in North Korea to have to live in a place that like barely has internet and barely has electricity. I think that's really tough for them. And what I really wish is that, you know, Taiwan and mainland China like close their beef, because I think that that is like a world crisis probably going to happen under the next administration. Like in the next 4 years, you're probably going to see Taiwan and China really have their beef like level up, unfortunately. Really?
It's a changing world, and we're fortunate to have people like you in it, man. I can't thank you enough for being part of Muslim Made. I hope you have had as much fun as me and Junaid. To close it out, any final messages? Anything that you're looking forward to, man? What's on the bucket list for the rest of I guess before election time?
There's a lot to do before election day. I'm just looking forward to reconnecting and talking to people. I think it's so much fun to like meet people, and especially young people that have like, you know, you've had like some influence in their lives. Like I've had kids that have come to me that were like, oh, in 5th grade, you were my judge for my science fair project. And now they're like seniors in high school. They're 18. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm old. Right. Or like a kid that I met in high school that's like graduated from college now is like back in Jersey City. Like, it's just like, wow, like things really move. Right. And like life just keeps going.
Life keeps going. That has been Muslim Made. Again, Musab, thank you so much for being a part of this episode. Hopefully we'll have you on in a future season when you're changing JC to its next level. Inshallah, man.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's been the episode. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.